And we are live. What's going on, everybody? I am Adam. This is Open Late. And tonight I will be opening the G.I. Joe Classified Series Snake Eyes and Polar Bear. Um, when I was kind of prepping for this, I couldn't help but think that's the best name they could come up with, just Snake Eyes and Polar Bear. I guess the polar bear that doesn't have a name. Why would he? He's just a polar bear, but it just seemed like an odd name for the set. It could have been, Mass Device Snake Eyes, or something to that extent. Something referencing the circumstances of why there's a polar bear in this set. But nope, just Snake Eyes and Polar Bear, which is fine, I guess, because at the end of the day, it's Snake Eyes with a polar bear. So what else would really make sense, in terms of a title for the set? But anyway, there it is, the Snake Eyes and Polar Bear. As I said, Snake Eyes, Polar Bear, pretty straightforward. Let's take a quick look at the packaging, and then we'll get this figure out of the box. Oh, before I do that, I will mention this. This is what I'm opening tonight, but I'm way behind on opening stuff, and with the end of the year coming up, and every toy tuber's imminent top 10 of 2025, I feel obligated to at least try to open all of the toys that I got in 2025. Now, that being said, I won't have time to do, proper, unboxing videos with editing, the very, very, very minimal amount of editing that I do. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this guy, and we'll see where we're at time wise. And I may open the Rattler HasLab figures. I may open the most recent Snake Eyes, which is like the version 4 Snake Eyes. I might open the armored up Cobra Commander. I've got the retro carded Cover Girl. So yeah, I might open a bunch. I don't know. I might open a bunch. I might open just this one and then be tired and bored and not not want to open anything else. But we shall see. Anyways, box for classified series, the packaging for classified series now does not do anything for me. It feels nondescript, it feels generic, it feels meh. I mean, for a few waves, for the first like 50 figures or so, when they were doing original artwork, getting different artists for every figure and doing original artwork, I thought it was amazing. I was keeping all the boxes. Then they changed the boxes and they were still doing artwork, but it was, not necessarily by sort of artists. It was just sort of generic action figure art, which isn't a bad thing, but it just kind of wasn't the same. And then now, the boxes have shrunk down. The way that they've done the cutout is different, and on and on and on. I've talked about this in other videos, so I'm not going to bother, going on too long about it. But I just, in general, don't care about classified packaging anymore. There it is. It's sort of a blackish box with a little bit of blue. There's sort of a carbon fiber, look to some of it, which is fine if that's what you're into. But yeah, the boxes don't do anything for me. Nice big cutout though, so you can't see what you're getting. You get the polar bear and Snake Eyes there, and then the call outs, presumably to Snake Eyes specialties. There's a QR code that goes somewhere. I've never scanned one of those. I don't know where it goes. I'll be perfectly honest. There's Snake Eyes fighting the polar bear. Now, I did, just before I started running the camera, very quickly check what the bear is like in the Mass Device episode that this scene kind of takes place in. And because I thought this was a brown bear, but it's not. It's a white bear. But here's the catch. It looks like a grizzly bear, but it's white. It does not look like a polar bear. And anybody that knows bears, at all knows that polar bears and grizzly bears don't look the same. They're not really built the same. Their head and neck are kind of completely different. Their proportions are just kind of different. I mean, they're both bears, but they don't look the same. So in the show, it was a white bear, but it looked like a grizzly bear. That's sort of the first thing. The second thing is that the bear, so you got Snake Eyes kind of standing, not quite level with this bear. But if Snake Eyes was standing level with this bear, he'd be the bear is way undersized for the episode. For a bear too. I mean, a male bear, whether it's a grizzly bear or a polar bear, would be bigger than this one. So those are my nitpicks, but other than that, who cares? It's a toy. You get the picture on the back. I don't know if the ones on the back are renders or pictures. Doesn't matter. It's coming out of the box, and the box is getting recycled. Some call outs to some of the details on the bear, which we will see anyway when we get there. On the other side, we have that same art as we get on the blue side, but in color. Looking very, very good. Snake Eyes is 161 in the series, which is bananas. The amount of figures that the classified line has put out is absolutely ridiculous. For a line that's only been going for like 5 years or however long it's been going, we've got 170 plus. I'm looking on the ground, and in that Steel Brigade with the outhouse is like 175. So there's at least 175 figures released, but there's technically more because some of those were like 2-packs, some even 3-packs. So, we're probably closer to 200 different figures in the G.I. Joe classified line in like 5 years. So you're talking about, what is that, like 40 figures a year, give or take? That is bonkers. As somebody that is involved in making toys, I can assure you that that is a ridiculous amount of toys. That is a massive undertaking, not only to design them and sort of do all the production, but to keep everything on track and to the logistics of it and on and on and on. Incredible. Anyway, that's the box. It's what's inside that counts. Before I open this up, though, just very quickly going to shout out a couple of the folks in the chat. Imperious Rex Collects is here. Studio Henge is here. Brian Brink is here. Good to have you guys. Brian says, I finally ordered this from Nerdzoic when they had a sale last month. I was surprised this wasn't in the Pulse Black Friday sale. Even Amazon still has it full price. Yeah. I was gonna say I'm if I see this on sale, like if I see this on like a pretty deep discount, admittedly, I would definitely buy another one just to get another polar bear, and because I really like this Snake Eyes. I know that the purple kind of cartoony Snake Eyes isn't everybody's cup of tea. I know that radioactive pink hands doesn't work for everybody, but you do get the other hands in there, and I think that's worth it. But really, it would be for getting a second polar bear. But anyway, and Brian says the one and only reason that you got that was for the polar bear because you got the snow cat. You needed more sort of Arctic stuff. Imperious Rex Collects. Kelly says you can pet all bears except polar bears. I'm sure there's a polar bear somewhere that gets pet. I'm sure of it, but maybe not. Now that I think of it. Brian Brink says the first year wasn't there like 10 figures? Probably. I think we had like maybe 2 waves in that first year. So you might be right. So if that's the case too, there was like 6 figures in the first wave, right? There was Snake Eyes, Duke, Scarlet, Roadblock, and Destro was the first wave. So actually 5 figures. And then the second wave was Cobra Commander, Gung Ho. I'm trying not to cheat, but hold on. Cobra Commander, Gung Ho. Oh, the Red Ninja was like super early. And then we got Cobra Island figures. We got Beachhead. We got the Roadblock version 2 was like figure number 9. And then the Cobra Trooper. So yeah, 10, that was 10 figures. That's the first 10. And then oh man, like a retrospect of GI Joe Classified in the first few years is kind of crazy because I'm looking because I have all the boxes behind me, which is why the microphone probably doesn't sound quite the same. I have the figures behind me, the boxes behind me. Figure number 11 was that Storm Shadow, the like Ninja Force Storm Shadow, and then Prophet Director Destro, and then straight into the movie figures. So like the first 20 figures were a real mixed bag. But anyway, who cares about that? Let's get this toy out of the box as it should be. Oh, he's heavy. Okay, I need my little snips. There's one leg on the card back thing. Then there's a broken bear trap. Studio Inch has classified as released figures at 4 times the speed I would want. You know what? Initially, like back in like 2019, 2020, when I had time, when I had more money, and I was collecting stuff, but like not on the level that I'm collecting stuff now. The pace didn't really bother me. I was kind of okay with it. And now, as we're, like I said, closer to 200 figures into the line, I'm not buying everything anymore. And it's not because the quality has dipped. It's not because they're not making cool stuff. It's because they're making so much stuff that they've now sort of checked off, like they've checked off my long list of figures that I wanted, and now I'm kind of picking up, just different stuff and random stuff. And I should say there is still stuff on my long list that I want. Like Hit and Run isn't out yet. I don't have it. It's released, but it's not released. So there's still stuff that I want, still characters that I want, but there are fewer and fewer of them, and there's kind of more and more, versions of characters or sort of deeper cuts or whatever that I'm a little bit less excited about. So I'm not buying everything anymore, but I was initially buying everything, like buying multiples of everything. And Studio Hand says I haven't even picked mine up from the local toy store yet. Dude, you should get it. It's a cool figure. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to catch up on the chat. I was ranting, and then yeah, I did. But in terms of this, like if the first year was technically only 10 figures or whatever, then you kind of go, okay, so take 10 away from that 200, and then it's closer to like 50 figures a year, which is absolutely bonkers. What's going on, Allison? Good to have you here tonight. Saf, good to have you. Jeff Morris is hanging out. Retro Toy Princess says vintage or classified. For me, it's classified. Love the vintage stuff. Like, absolutely love the vintage G.I. Joe stuff. But after I kind of recollected all the vintage stuff, I kind of realized that I don't love O-Ring. Like, I love them for the nostalgia, but in terms of like posing toys and playing with toys. Um, I prefer a modern figure. Game Quest says, can confirm this can only be displayed with Snake Eyes triumphantly straddling the bear's back as it stands upright, properly annoyed. Um, yeah, we'll get there. I want to see if this bear can stand up. I think it can, but Studio Hench says, according to my math, here's how much product was released in the classified line: 2020, $400. 2021, $400. I'm rounding these numbers off. 2022, 750. 2020, that can't be right. Where do those numbers come from? I mean, they can absolutely be right, but that's an outrageous number. That's not retail, is it? There can't have been that big of a jump. Can there? Maybe. I don't know. I'll have to look now. There's a lot of tape on this box, so I'm going to take a minute and just crash through this and just get everything out. Chat amongst yourselves while I feverishly try to get all the tape off. So I have this. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this or not. I have this thing where when I peel off labels and like tape and stuff like that, to save time, I just stick it on my hand, and then when I have all of the tape off, when I have the sort of like everything off that needs to come off, then I take it off and throw it in the garbage, so that I'm only kind of pausing and throwing things in the garbage once. It's like a weird thing. I don't know why I do it or when I started doing it or what, but um yeah. It just occurred to me that was a weird thing to do. Oof. Yeah, I stopped keeping the boxes uh relatively recently. And it made taking the figures out of the boxes so much quicker and easier because I wasn't worried about saving the trays or the cardboard or preserving anything for posterity. I was just like, screw it. I'm gonna recycle them and be done with it and never have to worry about it. Okay, so this is, I believe, just a straight repaint of the retro carded Snake Eyes. But as somebody that grew up with the G.I. Joe cartoon, I love this figure. Absolutely love it. I think it looks amazing. I think that color is phenomenal. And very, very excited to have this version. I know a lot of people kind of complain, too many versions of Snake Eyes, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? If you don't want it, don't buy it. I think it looks fantastic. I'm going to put this polar bear together. And the polar bear looks fantastic as well. I have already noticed one thing that I don't like, but that's fine. You don't have to like everything about it for it to still be a cool toy. And this is a cool toy. The articulation looks fantastic. I'm going to hopefully get these legs on relatively easily. But very quickly, I'm still just staring at those numbers and I cannot believe it. I can't believe that. Um, Let's see. Figures did go up in price. That's true. That is true. I don't so I had this conversation with somebody. I don't remember the classified figures ever being $20. I remember them being 22.99 at the like cheapest. Um, but maybe I just wasn't paying attention. I was also paying Canadian dollars, so um and this is a good point. Jeff Morris says, "Do those numbers include HasLabs and vehicles?" I can see how the price went up that much. Yeah, I mean that's a big thing too. When you look at like 2023, 2023 was like the his tank, and we started getting a whole bunch of other stuff like that, right? Is that right? I think, and then they were doing like, yeah, they were putting stuff out like crazy at that time. So that I could see it. I could see it. Um, yeah. Anyway, but those numbers are nuts. I keep coming back to this. That's crazy. $400 in 2020. So that means there were what, like 14? I'm trying to think. If we had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 50, about 15 figures, I guess. I guess in 2020 we had the double zero snake eyes, like the Hasbro Pulse exclusive snake eyes, the double zero, the boxed up one that's still my favorite classified figure. Then we had those two waves that I talked about. We also had Cobra Island Baroness. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's about 15 figures. And then the second year was probably, about that as well. And then it just went absolutely bananas, apparently. That's crazy. Those numbers are nuts. Um, Jeff Moore says the first year we had motorcycles. Um, do you mean 2023 was the first year? Because in the first year we had motorcycles. We had the coil cycle with Baroness, which I, for one, still think is awesome. And genuinely, when they did the coil cycle and it was new and it was different and it wasn't a big vehicle that we had before, like it wasn't just a vintage um it wasn't just a vintage figure or a vintage vehicle remade or redone or redesigned or redecoed or whatever. I was genuinely like very, very excited. I for one really tend to enjoy when classified takes an existing character and kind of makes it more modern. I don't, for the most part, I don't love just the straight up kind of vintage, you know, here's the figure that you had as a kid. I prefer, man, the articulation on this bear is really good. Um, Hold on. There we go. That's better. The articulation on this bear is really good. What was I saying? Okay, so when we get retro carded figures, don't do much for me. The first wave of GI Joe classified figures I loved because they were reimagining you kind of modernized versions of what we had. That being said, the retro carded versions are really, really good as well. So I'm really torn because I'm sort of somewhere in between, and I love all of them. I just love GI Joe figures. Anyway, Spaded One McDisney says bright pink gloves equals stealth mode. Well, they're not bright pink gloves. They're he's radioactive. He's radioactive because of that. Okay, polar bear is together. He's in one piece. I'll go over him in a minute. I'll just put this stuff off to the side. Let's take a look at Snake Eyes. Let's take a look at some of these accessories, and we'll talk about the mass device. We'll talk about what this comes from. So for anybody that isn't super familiar with the original Sunbow era GI Joe cartoon, a little history lesson. The cartoon, the Sunbow cartoon, started off with a little miniseries, a 5-part, I believe, 4 or 5-part miniseries that aired, on concurrent days. So, it started on Monday, and I don't know, I watched it probably years later. I don't think I watched it, when it was brand new because I'm in Canada. So I don't have any idea when they actually came out in the US versus how they came out in Canada. I got them on Saturday mornings. But anyway, they came out. It was a mini series. Every day you got an episode that sort of built up the mini series, and it was awesome. The mini series called The Mass Device. You can watch it on YouTube as sort of a one shot. Hasbro has posted it, so you can watch all the episodes together. I think they take out the intro music, but they do still put the commercial breaks in. Which is fantastic because that's how the show was made. That's how it was sort of meant to be watched. And yeah, so anyways, the mass device. So the whole plot of that first miniseries is that Cobra builds this thing called the mass device, and it's basically just a giant matter transporter. It's basically, think like a Star Wars or a Star Trek teleporter, right? Where they kind of dissolve things and then they transfer them, they kind of beam them, and then they sort of recombine them, and away you go. But to use the machine, they need these 3 very specific elements. They call them the catalytic elements. There are 3 of them. There are red crystals, there's heavy water, and then there's this like sand from a meteorite. And so the whole miniseries is sort of GI Joe trying to find these elements and sort of get there and get them before Cobra does, and kind of protect them so that Cobra can't use this mass device, to cause havoc, to cause chaos. First one, the red crystals, they're in this cave in the Arctic, and Snake Eyes basically sacrifices himself to protect them. But in the what am I trying to say? As a result of him sort of protecting them, he's caught, and he gets radiation. He gets radiated, I guess. He gets radiation poisoning, I guess, or I don't know. I mean, he survives. Obviously, it's Snake Eyes. But the reason that his hands are pink in this is that very often that's sort of how it's depicted. He was glowing. So he comes out of this cave with the red crystals, which is this accessory right here. But they're actually in this canister. So this is the canister that contains the red crystals on the mass device, but this is the canister that they transport the red crystals in. So you get both, which is amazing. I'm super, super excited about that. So you get both of those, but when he comes out of the cave, he's like glowing with radiation. And so that is sort of depicted by way of these pink neon hands. Now, what they've done, which I think is really, really cool, but I don't know how accurate it is, and I don't know how well it's going to show up. But the plastic is actually translucent pink plastic, and then they painted over it, which means that, if you shine a light on these or whatever, they're not going to be completely opaque. They're actually probably going to light up a little bit. But anyway, he comes with trigger hands. You get sort of karate chopping hands. Yeah. As well as fists in the neon glowing pink. But you also get trigger hands in just, flesh tone as well, which I appreciate because, he was in the cave and got radiation. But before that, he just had bare hands. And then after that in the show, he typically has bare hands. So very, very cool. We get a Sunbow rifle, which is on brand since it's, based on a Sunbow miniseries. We get a pistol, we get a little dagger, and these are all painted, in the same way, black plastic with some silver on, but looking very, very good. Very, very nice. This is painted really well too, actually. I think it's cast in this sort of dark gray plastic, and then the silver is painted, and then the pink is painted. But yeah, plenty of detail. As far as like a Saturday morning cartoon type of accessory, this seems very, very on point. And it doesn't have a crazy amount of detail because it's based on a Saturday morning cartoon, but it has enough that that I think they've done a good job with that. We get a bear trap as well, which is really cool because, again, in the cartoon, this is extremely relevant, and I won't tell you why. I will just suggest you go and watch the cartoon. And if you're watching on the replay, or if you're in the chat, you know what? If you're in the chat and you know why this bear trap is relevant, go ahead and sort of put it in there. If you're watching on the replay, let me know why this bear trap is relevant. If you're watching in the chat and you haven't watched the cartoon, when we're done, or now, I don't care. Do what you want. Go and watch the cartoon and see if you can figure out why this is extremely relevant and why I'm really excited to actually have that. Now, one more thing before I move on to the polar bear. The mass device, as I said, it required 3 elements, 3 catalytic elements, I think is what they call them. This being the red crystals, but there are 2 more items that are required for the mass device, which I have in fact obtained. So I would theoretically be able to power the mass device. So I have the heavy water, thanks to Dirk of Wolf King Customs, who at Legion's Con actually gifted this to me. He had the diver set that this comes with. And I said, "Hey, are you gonna open that?" And he's like, well, I wasn't planning on it." And I said, "Oh, okay, no problem." And he goes, "Why do you ask?" I said, "Well, I'm trying to get that element, but I don't really want to buy the set." And he just opened it and gave it to me, and that was incredibly generous, considering that was the first time I'd literally ever talked to him. But anyway, that's what Legion's Con's like. And then this one is the meteorite dust or sand or whatever it is. This actually came with the version 2 of Breaker. Part of the reason that I got version 2 of Breaker was to get that. But anyway, it was worth it. There's a bug in my drink. Ugh. Doesn't stop me from drinking my drink. I just drink around the bug, let's see. Brian Brink says the recoil cycle felt like a bathtub toy. I also remember it was such a hot item due to scarcity. You know what is? I mean, all of the scarcity is so funny, right? Because I initially got my first one shipped from somebody in the U.S. At the peak of Facebook groups actually trying to help each other out during the great pandemic, the great lockdown, whatever the heck you want to call it. But within about 6 months up here in Canada, the coil cycle was like Toys R Us couldn't give them away. They would have like buy one get one free sales on a discounted item, and the coil cycle you could literally get for like $15 kind of thing. I think I have like 5 of them because I genuinely think it's cool. It's different. It kind of reminds me of Akira, but it also I have one in pieces that I've had in pieces for years that I intend to paint to kind of match the Dreadnought color palette from their vintage vehicles. Who knows if I'll ever get around to it. It's in my workshop in a bin. I need the bin back. I have better uses for that bin at this point, but and Brian says she gets a lot of hate, but I love that first Scarlet head sculpt. So do I. I actually love that head sculpt. I actually really love that figure. Um, I think it's great. Now, I also, just like Duke, just like the retro Duke, I love that first version of Duke. Probably in my top 5 classified figures, maybe top 10. He might be kind of 6 or 7. But that first version of Scarlet, I genuinely thought was a really, really good, strong figure. And not just the head sculpt, but I genuinely thought it was a good figure. Not quite Scarlet, I think I think that was the problem that a lot of people had. That was like, it's not quite what they wanted Scarlet to be. And I get that. I can totally understand that. So. Studio Henge, I'm in Canada. My mom woke us up at 7 a.m. on a random Sunday because the first episode of The Mass Device was on. We only missed the opening Sky Striker attack. That is awesome. I love that your mom had to wake you up. Your mom was like, you're not going to want to miss this. What luck, hooked for life. Yeah, I have, fond memories. I have I think all of us do, right? I have very fond memories of Saturday morning cartoons. And I wish I could do it more often. But I try very, very hard to get up on Saturday mornings and watch cartoons with my kids. Or I did before they all turned into monsters and disobedient little brats. But anyway, that's a totally different thing. And I try to, whenever I can get up on Saturday mornings, and if I can get up before them, I'll put on like Saturday morning Cartoon Max out, or I'll put on like a DVD or a Blu-ray set of like Thundercats or GI Joe or whatever. We'll fire up YouTube and watch like vintage She-Ra. Not He-Man. I can't watch He-Man. It's terrible. But yeah, those Saturday morning, and we try to explain to them that if you missed your Saturday morning cartoons, if you slept in, that was it. You didn't get another chance. If you were lucky enough to have, a VHS tape recorder, you might be able to watch those episodes again before somebody taped over it with, for us again in Canada, hockey or the news or like step aerobics or something like that. Because VHS tapes were, they didn't last. You didn't get to keep them. You were just kind of borrowing it so you could watch something again. But anyway, Snake Eyes had a Spock moment. He totally did. And it was like literally episode 2. So like in episode 2 of G.I. Joe, you assume that Snake Eyes is dead. And that's it. And it's like, it still hits hard. Like it is, for the second episode of a kid's cartoon, having one of the main characters sacrifice his life, or seemingly sacrifice his life, was it was crazy. But then he's back in episode 3, so it's fine. Brian Brink says, I wonder if you can only pet a polar bear if you have radioactive hands. Well, here's the thing. He couldn't pet the polar bear. In the episode where Snake Eyes fights the polar bear, it's not even a fight. The polar bear just destroys him. And then an old blind man comes and saves him. But anyway, Studio Hand says, I'm not going to spoil that bear trap moment, but every frame of that miniseries is burned into my memory. I love it. And The Revenge of Cobra, which for anybody that doesn't know, was the second miniseries that started off the sort of regularly occurring cartoon. He says, I love it 10 times more than the rest of the episodes. I see your point, but what about Worlds Without End? Because that is a 2-parter. It's not a whole miniseries, but I think Worlds Without End might be in the mix there. At least it is for me. But anyway. Samrock 1 says that polar bear would be perfect with a Mr. Freeze figure. It might, but I don't have any Mr. Freeze figures. So anyways, let's take a look at this polar bear. Good segue. The polar bear is admittedly bigger than I thought it was gonna be. Proportionally, uh, you know, it's bigger than I thought. I'll be honest. When I saw the renders for it, when I saw the sort of initial offering, I think maybe what it is like when you put them like this, it seems small. But as I said, I want to see. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm gonna pop this head off and show you. There's a really, really big cut here to allow for the polar bear's head to have like a crazy good range of motion. And they've even I don't know if you're going to see it. There's like a curve in the barbell to allow for the ball joint to actually sit lower than where the cut goes. So you actually get a crazy, crazy good range of motion on that neck. That's the neck, or that's the head all the way up. That's the head all the way down. So when you stand him up, he can basically look down. But then you get articulation in the neck as well with that, and awesome, incredible, like flawless execution there for the neck. All the legs are on ball joints, so they can go wide, they can go, forward, they can go back. There is a joint at the polar bear's knee. There is a joint at the little ankle kind of piece, and then the toe articulation as well. So there's plenty of articulation in this leg. Very, very impressed. It's heavy, but it's not like crazy heavy. It's heavy enough that I think it'll work really, really well, and it's not going to fall over, and it's going to be really stable. But really, what we want to see, what we need to see, is will the bear stand up? Or at least that's what I need to see. And how does he look when he is standing up? Oh, he's huge. Okay, I take it back. I think he's an acceptable size. This is, yeah, like more or less what you see in the cartoon. And then the bear just like swipes him, and that's it. That's like the end of the fight. And he stands pretty well on his back feet. Not perfect, but pretty well. And that's not even his angry face. He comes with an angry face, which is quite angry. It looks pretty good. Painted all the way inside, sculpted all the way in there as well. So there's decent sculpt work, on the top of the mouth. There's the tongue sculpted in there. The teeth, they try to paint the teeth, but they kind of look goofy because they're sculpted in there, but they're not. There's no real differentiation between the teeth and like the side of the mouth and stuff. But anyway, the big teeth, the important teeth are there, and they work. And if I pop this head off, pop this head on. Oh, you get sort of full bear mode. And he will stand up, and I gotta adjust this ever so slightly to show you how big that bear is. Oofa, oofa. But I'm gonna adjust it again because I'm gonna put that bear back down on all fours. It's impressive. I think if you're on the fence about this set, I think it's worth it for the polar bear. But I mean, that snake eyes is awesome too. No tail. The tail's there. It's like sculpted, but it's like it doesn't articulate or anything like that. Paint app wise, the polar bear looks pretty good, apart from the head. Don't mind the head. But here was my nitpick. This is sort of I noticed this right away. There's a weird thing going on here where the side of the polar bear is like pretty white, and then it sort of got a bit of sort of a gray, beige, brown all through the back, all through the neck. that's consistent along the spine of the polar bear. But the head is like inversed. So the top of the head is like white, and then the lower part is that kind of beige. And so it doesn't match. Like it matches better if it's like that, but that's obviously not how it goes. So just a weird little nitpick thing about paint apps on the polar bear. But that's a pretty minor thing for what you get here. One more accessory that comes with the polar bear, we get this alternate piece with arrows embedded in the shoulder. This shoulder piece will pop right off. You get sort of an exposed wound there, or you can plug this piece on so that he's got arrows coming out of his shoulder. So you could have another character firing arrows or crossbow bolts at this guy and use it in a different setting if you didn't want to use it in a mass device display. Or you can have it as an injured, battle damaged polar bear. So yeah, there you go. There's the polar bear. There's Snake Eyes. This set is awesome. This polar bear is phenomenal. I think this is worth buying for the polar bear, even if you don't want Snake Eyes. I think this polar bear is really, really well done. I would say, yeah, if you just want the polar bear, worth the price of the set. If you can get it on sale, even better. But yeah, there it is. Let me see here. Nothing more in chat. Okay, let's move on, shall we? Yeah, very, very excited about this. I'm gonna condense all this stuff down. Sort of move it to the side in case of the polar bear. Should we open more? Do you guys want more G.I. Joes? What should I do next? Retro carded cover girl, maybe? We'll just do that and call it a night, I think. Because I got other videos that I want to record. Yeah, let's do that. Then I can open Joe's whenever. I feel like this is the most appropriate to open alongside a Sunbow Snake Eyes. This is kind of a Sunbow. I think this is the same look that she had in the Mass Device. I think she was blonde in the Mass Device, and then she had like brown hair after that. So yeah, retro carded cover girl. There's the retro card. More or less. I mean, you can get the idea, I think. I'm not going to bother adjusting this again. On the back, you get cross-sell for a couple more retro carded figures. You get the Televiper, you get Falcon. No, Flint. Sorry, not Falcon. You get the file card with 5 languages on it, which to me just doesn't look that great. So, I don't keep these cards. I don't keep them on the card back. I just like the figures. And I think the previous version of CoverGirl was great. I didn't have a problem with it. I know that there were those that didn't approve necessarily of the head. Not so much the head sculpt as the sort of execution of the paint apps and stuff like that. Little too much makeup on that CoverGirl, maybe, if you kind of look at it that way. So for some folks, this is sort of the CoverGirl that they wanted. I'm just cutting it off the card. There she is. I mean, admittedly, this head sculpt, this look is better. I'm not gonna deny that. But as I said, I didn't have a problem with the other one. I bought this one not so much to replace that cover girl as to add another woman to my GI Joe classified collection. I have two girls, two daughters, and anytime I can add more women to my action figure collection, I try to do that because they like them, they appreciate them, and I appreciate them too. Simple figure, green pants, green jacket, executed well. The jacket is softer plastic. It's not part of the torso. They've done a good job here in terms of doing green for the butterfly joint. So the sort of jacket sleeve looks right. Every once in a while you'll see a figure where it doesn't look quite right. You move the arm and then it's either got brown or flesh on the inside because that's the way the shirt is. But they've done a good job here to make it so that you don't notice the articulation and sort of the difference there. So well done, well done. The belt is simple but effective. The boots look good. Everything about this looks pretty good. Double jointed knees, double jointed elbows. So yeah, I'm down. I like this a lot. I think this alternate head is cooler with the braid, with the baseball cap. The Pitts garage is what it says on the baseball cap there, which is cool. I think this head is probably a little bit more Sunbow. This head is a little bit more fun. It's a little bit different. This is what I'm talking about. Like with classified, I love when they do stuff like this because it's just different and it's got a little bit more character. We got a base with that as well, a stand. She comes with a sledgehammer because why wouldn't she? A wrench because she's cover girl. She's a mechanic. The sledgehammer, I don't really understand. Maybe that came with the vintage one, and maybe that's why they've included it. There is a pistol, which I believe we have seen before. Nothing crazy exciting about this pistol. An extra set of hands, so it's gripping hands on the figure out of the box, as well as a pair of fists. I always appreciate when they do include fists for GI Joes. I was saying the other night when I was unboxing a figure, I can't even remember what it was, but I said, I don't necessarily need fists unless it's a figure that fights with their fists. I feel like GI Joe needs fists. Martial arts figures need fists. Dragon Ball figures need fists. Not everybody needs fists. We get another one of these Sunbow rifles. My only complaint about these Sunbow rifles is that I feel like every single figure comes with a different paint app on the rifle. I wish they would just pick one paint app and do them all that color, or sell me, a set of a dozen of them, and then I'll just have, a set of rifles that all match, so that I can have an armory. That's really all I want, is to have an armory. Yeah, this head looks fantastic. Really, really good. Let me see here. Brian Briggs said the alternate heads from the sniper look good on this cover girl as well. Okay. And for anybody that is not aware, Brian's talking about another figure. There's this. Wait a minute. From the sniper. Oh, okay. Yeah, the 60th anniversary sniper. Okay. Cool. I didn't get that one, but I want it. Brian Brink says sledgehammer, need some force to get some of those tank parts off. That's a good call. I mean, I could, yeah. If you're working on a tank, if you're working on a Wolverine, maybe you need this to get the treads off, something like that. I could see that. I'll buy that. I'll allow that explanation to stand. All right. Anyway, there you go. Some Sunbow goodness here with Snake Eyes and a polar bear and CoverGirl. We're just about an hour, so I think that probably suits me just fine. I went way longer with that Snake Eyes than I thought I would, so I think we'll call it a night. Unless anybody has any questions, comments, concerns. But otherwise, you guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. I love hanging out with you guys and opening up toys. Stay tuned. I've got a lot of unboxing videos to release. I think next week there's probably going to be like one every single day. I'm looking at a video tomorrow. There's one Friday. There's one Saturday. Might even be one on Sunday if I can sort of record it and get it edited. Otherwise, I'm probably just going to do a live video on Sunday. And then I've got, yeah, I think it's going to be a video every week next week. And maybe right up until Christmas. So stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Shameless plug. I'm like 40 some odd subs away from 1,000. With I would love to hit 1,000 by the new year. So please share the videos. Share this wherever. If you have multiple, YouTube accounts, feel free to subscribe with multiple accounts. Because I would love to get to 1,000, and not for any reason other than my massive ego. Studio Hand says, "Oh, that was a mess. These updated numbers. Okay. 2020, $394. 2021, 401. 2022, 758. 2023, $2,390. 2024, 2,109. 2025, 2,367. That is crazy. You know what? I bet I spent that in 4 of those 5 years. 2025, I've kind of taken my foot off the gas a little bit. So I think I think, I'm trying to I remember the first figure that I skipped on or I passed on. It is one of the first Python Patrol figures. And I felt justified because it was Python Patrol, and I was like, I can live without Python Patrol. I can live without some of the Tiger Force stuff. And then I think the first figure that I passed on was the retro carded. What's his name? He was a retro carded figure, and then it was sort of slowly but surely I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'll just buy the ones that I want, but I still buy tons, and I'm not army building as much. That's a big one. Studio Hench says I army build the best Cobras, getting 3 or 6, sometimes more. 3 or 6, I think, is okay. I have 3 probably of all of the army builders that they've done, like the true army builders in terms of like they're inspired by vintage. I don't have like the Python Patrol Viper or something like that. But the Cobra Trooper, I have about a dozen of those. And the Alley Viper, I have 6 of. Bats, I have 6. And then just about everything else, I have 3. Because, yeah, I mean, it's G.I. Joe, and I definitely, as a kid, did not have the funds to army build. And, now that I have a little bit more adult money, I'm treating myself. So, I mean, you stop buying all the wide release figures until at least 25% off. See, where I am, I don't find them as easily at 25% off. And so when it's a main character that I know that I'm going to want and I'm going to kick myself if I miss, I order them day one. And I get mine from eCollectibles up here in Canada, and Mike's awesome. Usually I know what the releases are actually before they get released. So I usually fire him a text and say, hey, the 4 figures that are coming out on Friday or whatever. I'm down for these 3 or whatever. So I don't even have to go crazy when they release or anything like that. But Same Time Toys just subbed. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's awesome, man. Good to have you. Yeah, again, a name that I'm not familiar with. Hopefully, you enjoy what you're seeing. Hopefully, you enjoy some other videos in the future, or feel free to go through videos from the past, whatever sort of interests you. But thank you for being here. Thank you for hanging out. 2023 was so big because a ton of product got delayed in the shipping, and it all flooded out in 2023. But now we're creeping up to those numbers just by default. Yes, yeah, I think a lot of stuff like 2022 stuff got delayed, and then it just got wild. And then they were like, well, people bought it all, so let's just put that much stuff out every year. And we are suckers, and so we do. Anyway, as I said, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. It is always more fun opening toys with friends. So thank you guys for being here. Um, I appreciate you guys. You could be anyone. You could be watching much better channels than this one. So I appreciate you guys. Until next time. Bye bye.